Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielson and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
$11 on a Thursday. What's up? Welcome to The Lock Shop right here on Edmonton Sports Talk. And tell your friends about EST. Happy to bring you all of the live shows that we do here on Edmonton Sports Talk every single day from 6 until 1. We do have two guys and a goalie coming up a little bit later on today with Gager and Cass. We'll definitely take a deeper dive into that Lindholm deal. And, we'll discuss that here on the Lock Shop as well with Huss when he pops by. We got into it pretty good today on the Nielson show as well. Nasty Chat is already rolling. And like I said, 780-218-9999. You, Chaz. I mean, I am so done with the 3 days with barely any games. Nobody gives a damn prior to All-Star weekend. As you, Chaz, says in the Nasty Chat here. Tough couple of days for NHL bets. Woof. Bring on the all-star props. Like, that's where we're at right now. The last few days of National Hockey League betting have been so bad that we are like, okay, let's go all-star props. Nobody better to get to the all-star props than with Huss. You know that he's gone way too far deep down this rabbit hole, I would think. Duck Dad is in this. Picking winners these last few days was rough. Picking the unders was the play. VR Montenegro. Yeah, tough couple days for sure. They can't all be bad. Bring on the weekend. And Duck Dad, he's finally there. So I finally dipped my toes into lacrosse exclusive. Just looking at where the teams are in the standings and the goal differential, that plus 700 is seemingly actually really good value. So I do like the fact that that Duck Dad's just like, okay, we're finding value here on lacrosse right now, which is big. We got lots to get to as we work our way through the Lock Shop today. Of course, we are, next week is Super Bowl week. We'll definitely get into a props show. We'll definitely get into an entire show just about the game. It's going to be a lot of fun next week. I'm really looking forward to that. This Calgary-Vancouver trade is certainly giving us something to talk about today. Mark makes an interesting point. Canucks cup or bust. The odds barely change post-trade, LOL. Well, that's kind of what I said this morning on our show. Like, the Vancouver Canucks would be a tough matchup for the Edmonton Oilers, or if you're, a WSTer, maybe the Winnipeg Jets in a conference final or something along those lines. The Vancouver Canucks were not going to be an easy out in the first place. Elias Lindholm makes them better, but Elias Lindholm all of a sudden does not make me think. Like, it wasn't like yesterday at this time I was saying, man, the Oilers could definitely beat the Canucks. And then the Canucks got Lindholm, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, man, there's no way the Oilers could beat the Canucks. I don't think it overall. So that's why it doesn't surprise me that the odds haven't changed much post-trade. I mean, maybe he gets there and it absolutely, clicks right away and things go extremely well. But, yeah, I'm not surprised that the line didn't move because it hasn't viewed my way of Canucks versus the elites so far. Big Maple Sports Card says, whenever we feel like we don't have anything going for us, we always have Pebble Beach. That's a really good point. I had it on the list there on the left today. Live Pebble Beach updates, which is something that we can certainly get into. How about Rose? 3 under through 3. Aberg. Fleetwood. These are all P. Greggy guys. Vic, 1 under. Rory is even. Ricky is even. Denny McCarthy, even. Not bad for our top 20 play on Denny McCarthy. Kirk, who already has a win this year, is even. Cantley is even through 2. Scotty Scheffler is even through 2. Who else were we on yesterday? A couple of Canadians. Mac Hughes is even through 1. Hadwin is over. So a decent little start here. Lots of the big boys have yet. Spieth is not teed off yet. Morikawa has not teed off yet. Tony Finau probably just teed off. Something that Hustle likely want to keep track of. Xander Schauffele a little bit later on today as well. So, yeah, we'll definitely keep tabs on everything that's happening at AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and we'll work our way through that one as well. Duck Dad says he did hit his Nyquist, Deneau, Ryan O'Reilly under 3.5 shots, and PLD under 2.5 shots. and the game under 7.5 total shots on goal for those 4 players. Congratulations, Duck Dad. Anybody hitting anything in the National Hockey League last few nights, I salute you. That's pretty good stuff right there. You can text us anytime, 780-218-9999, 780-218-9999. Winnipeg Sports Talk coming up a little bit later on in less than an hour on WST. We'll have 2 guys and a goalie right here on EST. And Huss slides in wearing the ball cap today. I appreciate the look. Huss, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
Yeah, I had just done a pre-tape for WST, and I was just about to get in and realize that I looked like I'd just been electrocuted. I think my hair was sort of wet. I had the headset on, and I realized we got to get down to business in the lock shop. We'll just throw a lid on.
Throw the lid on.
Sponsors, Little Brown Jug. Shout out to them. Yeah, big trade last night.
Huge trade last night. As Mark pointed out, hasn't really impacted the odds much, which I think is an interesting conversation because I kind of just laid it out. I like the pickup for the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know if it completely changes my mind on the Oilers' ability to beat the Canucks in a second-round playoff matchup if they get there. I like the trade on both sides. I really do. I know some people think the Canucks overpaid, for simply a rental at this point. And then other people pointed out, like, what did the Canucks really give up? A couple of guys who were taken in the 3rd round, first-round pick, and a guy who'd basically fallen completely out of favor with you anyway. So where do you come out on this one? It was great having a significant trade to talk about this morning.
Yeah, well, and we'll certainly be getting into it. I mean, I think the biggest, certainly it resonates here the most because Elias Lindholm, based on pretty much everyone we've talked about, was in some ways probably the best legit top 6 center that we're seeing, on an expiring contract on a brutal team that probably was going to be available at the deadline. And listen, I'll give Alvain credit for, moving quickly, well ahead of the deadline to get their guy. And I thought you made a great point last night on Twitter. Not that this is specifically about the Oilers or the Golden Knights, but and I'll say the same thing about Winnipeg. I mean, winning the division this year is a significant advantage in either division. Like if Vancouver can win the Pacific, Edmonton and Vegas are going to go at it in the first round. And that's going to be a very, very good team that gets bounced in the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. And it's the exact same thing in the Central Division. Like if Winnipeg can somehow win the division, Dallas and Colorado will beat the hell out of each other in the first round. And listen, you're still going to play a good team that's in the playoffs, but I think we'd all agree that there is a gap between the top 3 teams in both divisions and the Nashvilles, the LAs, Kraken, St. Louis, whoever the wild card teams are right now. So more so than in recent years, I think there is a massive, massive push to try and win the division, especially by teams like Winnipeg and Vancouver that I don't think anyone had them in the mix for the top spot earlier on. And funny enough, I think the Winnipeg Jets are for probably a reason why Vancouver felt the need to go and do what they did. Because if you look at Winnipeg, especially during the 6 games going into the break without Mark Scheifele, that's the hole in their lineup that they need to fill. So we'll now go back to the other trade targets. And knowing Shovel Day off, there's guys out there that no one is talking about that he is. I mean, we always go back to 17-18, shortly before the deadline. Out of nowhere, the Jets acquired Paul Stastny. Paul Stastny was not on any trade lists. He was not thought to be available. And then all of a sudden, he's a Winnipeg Jet and made a massive impact when he came here as the team made it to the conference finals. So it certainly did spice things up a little bit. And I think in some ways it sets the market. I don't know a lot about these prospects that the Flames got, although I do know that one of the 3rd rounders had been playing kind of at a first rounder level. So, I mean, they did give up players.
Yeah, the guy who's like 3rd in league scoring in the OHL right now, like not among defensemen, but among players.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I give Vancouver credit because they are a team that I mean, I don't want to say they're playing with house money because we're not even there yet to the playoffs, but they're so far beyond what most people's expectations are. And we heard yesterday, I think it was Rutherford who was on with maybe it was Overdrive, saying that, and we've heard this before from Winnipeg too, they sort of feel like they owe it to their players to do everything they can
with this start that they've had, right? Like,
yeah, exactly, to make the most of it. So trade season on in the National Hockey League. I didn't think we'd get one during the player break heading into All-Star, where we are right now. And Vancouver looks to be pretty set. They've made the big push, and certainly a team like Winnipeg, there'll be a lot of eyes on Kevin Cheveldayoff as to what they do in the next month, and maybe preferably sooner as opposed to later, much like Vancouver just did.
Well, we do have a big hockey episode today here, All-Star Weekend. We're going to take a look at some futures. But Huss, you mentioned Winnipeg and Chevy, maybe looking at some names that aren't out there a lot. One name that is out there is Sean Monahan, who's having a great season right now. Is that it? Mark was asking, he goes, do you think somebody immediately goes and overpays for Sean Monahan just so you don't get scooped up, by 2 weeks ahead of the deadline or something like that? Would you see the Jets, that everybody here in Edmonton wants the Oilers to be in on everything, obviously. But do you see the Jets going and getting a guy like Sean Monahan here? Would that be something that would be up their alley, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think he'd be up Rick Bonus's alley because he can win a damn face-off. And that's just been an Achilles heel for Winnipeg all year long. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, but the Jets are consistently, falling way behind in face-offs on most nights. And we know how important those face-offs can be in particular situations late in games. He is very good at that. I've heard the asking price for Montreal is a first-round pick for Monahan on an expiring deal. I mean, to me, that seems insane.
I think they'll get it, though. I do. I think they'll get it. I just think I don't think there's a lot. I mean, now that Lindholm's gone, there's not a lot of players that would have experience, especially he's got like 30. He's outproducing Lindholm this year. He's got like 30-some points in 40 games, which is pretty good. And the trade deadline's crazy. Like, I could see somebody giving them, if not a first, a second, and a decent prospect. You know what I mean? Like, I think they're gonna do well with Monahan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. The Jets do have Montreal's second-round pick, which could be like in and around the 40 range. I mean, probably with where they're sitting right now. Hey, maybe even better if they trade a few guys and sort of, fall back towards the end. The thing with Monahan is that I just don't know whether he skates well enough to hang with the guys that he'd be playing in the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine him with Nikolai Ehlers? Like, I don't know whether he is that guy that goes in and puts that. Could he help a team win some games, and would he fit somewhere in the roster? Yeah. But I think, it's not like you've got unlimited first-round picks to trade. And listen, where the Jets are right now, it does project to be a late first-round pick. So maybe instead of a second-rounder, you have to hold your nose and give a pick that you hope is going to be in the 30s or 28 or 29. But we'll see. But, we've been talking about some other guys that, would cost more, but might have a bigger impact. I do wonder about Boone Jenner's situation in Columbus. He's got a great deal, and he's got 2 more years at under $4 million. So I think that makes that position much more of a premium. And listen, he's the captain of that team, and as much of a disaster as it is right now, I'm not sure what the optics would be of them moving on off of their captain. And the other question about Columbus is, do you trust Jarmo Kekalainen to make these deals? Everything we're hearing out of there, I'm not sure if he is going to be the guy moving forward. But in the situation that they're in, I think it's pretty important to take advantage of the deadline or what they can. I hear Fantilli's now out for 8 weeks. Laine's on the player resource list or whatever. He's taking care of his mental health. So there's not a lot going on for Columbus. It would be a nice pickup for the Jets to get a guy like that. We've talked about Brock Nelson in New York, although with where the Islanders are right in that mix, I think that if you even ever had a chance to get a guy like that from Lou, you're probably waiting right down till the deadline, because I think that Lou still fancies his team as one that can make a run and get into a playoff spot. So There's plenty of guys. Adam Henrique's another guy in Anaheim.
He's one that's come up quite a bit here in Edmonton too.
Yeah. Now he's got a big contract. Like his contract, and this is why the Oilers are so screwed. I mean, the Oilers have no cap space whatsoever. The Jets do. But still, bringing a guy in that's making close to $6 million, if you're not really trading much off your roster, becomes problematic and difficult to do. What intrigues me about Henrique is that if you recall, I mean, he went to the Cup final as a rookie in New Jersey. Since then, which is over a decade ago, he's played 4 playoff games. So that's a guy I think that would jump at the opportunity to move to a good team, to play in an impactful role, because it certainly could help him when it comes to free agent possibilities going into next season.
Yeah, that's true too. He's got a 10-team no trade list, right? So but you're right. He could be hungry.
I mean, like, how many teams are really on the no trade list when you're basically talking about a rental?
Yeah, like, and going to take a run at a cup, like
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
teams that would want him, he would probably want to go and take a run at this thing, right? Like if they're going to trade him to San Jose, he can say no. You know what I mean? Like that would.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, Winnipeg's usually on those lists. I mean, at least from the get-go, I mean, people are like, oh, do I want to be there with the cold? I mean, dude, you'd be coming here in the middle of March and hopefully be here until the end of June. So I don't really worry at all about like when you're talking about guys on terrible teams that haven't been in the playoffs. I think you can throw the no trade list right out the window. If he wants to go back there in the offseason, they can sign him and it'll make the team better for the assets they get in the meantime. So it's going to give us lots to pontificate about for the next month before we get closer to deadlines on a Friday this year.
Yeah, March 8th, right? Friday deadline. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Third anniversary of WST that day.
Did you guys start on a deadline or did you start on March 8th?
We start on March 8th.
Oh, okay. All right, man.
Yeah, the deadline would be the last couple of years it's been huge. We've gone with a 4-hour stream. So we basically doubled the size of the show and just had people jump on, stick around throughout. It's been a lot of fun.
It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, we're going extended coverage. We've already planned it. Same with CFL free agency. We're hitting a little CFL free agency show after all of our shows too, because you got to own it, man. Like we want to be one of the CFL destinations in this country. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a lock shop that day too, which we'll have a lot of fun on too. CFL free agency day. So that should be good. Huss, did you dive into the All-Star stuff? Do you want to go All-Stars or do you want to go season-long futures here first?
Why don't we go season-long futures here first? By the way, just a quick Super Bowl update. This Chiefs number keeps getting better. It was plus 111 yesterday. It's plus 113. I mean, very small moves, but as I told you before, I'm a little surprised. And when you look in at the money, about 70% of the bets and about 65% or so of the money is on the Chiefs.
On the Chiefs, yeah.
So this is a little bit of a weird one, although the same thing was happening last week with the Ravens. So again, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The line is still 2, but again, all I'm focusing in on the money line right now. But if you've been kind of holding off thinking I'm going to jump on the Chiefs, well, plus 113, it's there for you right now. But yeah, NHL futures. And, man, there's a lot to get to right now. But your boys, the Oilers, are the Cup winners. It's funny how they were the favorite at the beginning of the year, or right there, dropped precipitously. And then there was the thoughts that they had less than a 50-50 chance of making the playoffs. And yet here we are at the All-Star break, and the Oilers are 7-1.
It is rather insane. I mean, I wonder what was the lowest they dropped if they had any resets along the way in the first half of the season, because I mean, they are basically where they are when the season started, and this 24-3 run here in their last 27 obviously has people believing in them. But to see them right back up at the top already at 7-1 it's kind of amusing. Like, this is an all-time quick turnaround. This has been scorching earth for 2 months. Yeah, basically 2 months. And it's got them right back to where everybody sort of thought they would be. So that McDavid line has moved significantly too. to win the Art Ross. It was 25-1 yesterday. It was 23-1 at Lock Shop yesterday. It was 18-1 when I looked at it this morning. So it's already dipped inside. I thought it might get inside 20-1 by the time they drop the puck next week, but it was at 18-1 this morning for Connor McDavid to come back and win the Art Ross. So
good thing we got it when we did yesterday when it first came out, because as we said, listen, people believe in McDavid. There's a lot of things that can happen. The Oilers are on this all-time tear. Like you said it yesterday, we're never, ever going to have an opportunity to bet Connor McDavid at a number like this, even with the discrepancy, knowing that they have the games in hand. And the other thing is that with the lead that Vancouver has, much like what we just talked about, Vancouver wanting to finish first, like I don't think Edmonton gets to a point where they're in a playoff spot and then, starts sitting guys or doesn't care about winning games anymore.
No.
I mean, they simply don't have that luxury because of their start of the season.
Yeah, they're going to have to push the entire way. I mean, whether they want to track down the Canucks, they want home ice against the Golden Knights, they're going to have to push pretty much the entire way. So that's something that you can look at. Now, they've got a bunch of things posted over at Cool. You got the award winners. You got teams that make the playoffs. You got the team point totals as well, Huss. Have you looked into those team point totals? Is there anything that jumps out? And it's good. Like a few of the team, like for the example, the Oilers, over 106.5, or if you want something better at plus 225, you can get them over 109.5 points. So there's a few options here. What are you looking at?
A couple of the teams that are intriguing to me, it's less so the totals of the top teams and more so teams that could potentially be big time sellers and what that does on the unders. Like I'm looking at Calgary right now. Calgary's total is 86.5. Let me just pull up the standings right now. Calgary is 22-22-5. So they're basically a 500 team. They are through 49 games. So if you go 500 for the entire season, you're 82 points. Like, I think there's a very good chance that Tanev gets traded. I think potentially you could see Hanifin get traded as well.
According to everybody here in Edmonton, they're going to get both of them. That's just what happens right now. Everybody's getting everybody in Edmonton now. It was funny. Yesterday, people thought the Oilers were going to get Lindholm. So, yeah, Calgary's – if Calgary can pull off similar trades where they get like warm body back and picks and stuff, I could see them moving those guys, but it's not going to help them right now. I think this is a very interesting strategy that you're taking here. I like this. Yeah,
I'm on the under for Calgary, under 86.5. I mean, they haven't been very good to begin with. And I mean, to get to 87 points, we're talking about needing to be 5 games over 500 in the final 33 games of the year. Well, they've been 500 for 49. Like, do we think they're going to be significantly better in a shorter period of time? I don't. So I think that might be my favorite pick. And I was thinking that already even before the Lindholm trade was made last night. I mean, as you sort of project to see teams as to where they end up. So Calgary under 86.5 is one. Where the heck? Oh, I just closed this accidentally. Hold on a second here. Pulling back up, the Arizona Coyotes, 84.5, which is interesting that they are just underneath. They're lower than Calgary because they actually are 1 game ahead. Like, they do have 1 extra game to be played. They've lost 3 in a row though coming into the break. They're 4-5-1, and I think we are going to hear a lot more about the future of the team in the next number of weeks. Now, you can debate whether that has anything to do with the on-ice product, but if the team continues to play the way they have as of late, if they fall off a little bit, and then all the talk is just about where they're playing next year, I don't think that helps the team. That's for sure. So, if you look at Arizona, let's just take a quick look at these other teams in the playoff race in the West. What do we have for the Kraken here? Seattle is 2-2. Am I missing Seattle? Do you see it?
I I do not see Seattle.
Huh.
Yeah, I think there's a few teams missing on here, actually.
Maybe a few reasons why that is. And what do we got? So the Minnesota Wild
84.5.
4.5. The Wild are 2 games under 500. This is very similar to Calgary. The thing with Minnesota is that I don't really think that they're going to be making a bunch of moves that sort of deplete their roster right now. You want to talk about crazy trades. Like you talk about how everyone in Edmonton thought they were getting everybody from Calgary. I saw a list yesterday and people were talking about the Jets trade targets being Joel Eriksson-Ek. If anyone in their right mind thinks the Minnesota Wild are trading Jeek, using the acronym.
Jeek. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, Jeek. Jeek. Shout out to Jesse Pierce, our friend in Minnesota. When she's doing lines, they just refer to him as Jeek. But he's their number one center. He legit could be a Selke candidate most years. He's unbelievable 2-foot game, the 200-foot game. He is signed to a long-term deal at under $6 million a year. And that the Minnesota Wild would trade him to their arch rival in the division and play against him for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but your team wants him, Huss, right? Like that's why it's always.
And the other thing is all these Casey Middlestat's another guy that people bring up. And I'm like, well, are you trading? Are you fine with trading Cole Perfetti? And they're like, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers. One guy was an 8th overall pick. Our guy's a 10th overall pick. Like Buffalo's not looking to just start another rebuild or whatever. I mean, this is a good young player right now under team control. Like, would I love to get him?
They've been waiting and waiting for him, man. They're not also going to be like, okay, he's great now. Let's go. Like,
yeah, let's get off of him. So, I mean, the one thing that, I mean, we hear all these names thrown out, but it is important to remember that there are assets, significant assets that have to go the other way. And that's why we end up usually talking about rental players like Lindholm in that, it's a much different situation where, and I think for the Jets, let's back to the Jets for a second, because of the way their contract's set up and the fact that Rucker McGroarty is going to be here, presumably at the end of the Michigan season. Brad Lambert's having a strong game. He's going to be ready to challenge for a spot. Elias Salmonson probably. Like, they're going to want to have some space for ELC players. And they have every forward signed for next year, with the exception of Perfetti, who's an RFA and will get a bridge deal or a long-term deal, one of the two. So there's a lot of things that need to happen around it. But I'm less. I put it this way: I would kill to get Joel Eriksson-Ek on the Winnipeg Jets, but I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it because I think it's about as likely as us getting Connor McDavid.
Did I tell you yesterday? I don't know if we talked about yesterday on Lock Shop, but I tell you about the Kulak text we had to our show yesterday in the morning.
No,
it was classic. It was there had been some talk about like, what would you have to add to Kulak to get Lindholm, because they'd have to take Kulak's salary back. Some guy texted into our show, and I love trade deadline madness. It's like this disease that kicks in for about 6 weeks prior to the deadline. The text led to an entire text game for us yesterday. It was, guys, I'm okay with Kulak for Lindholm, but if they could get Tanev or Hannafin, it would really ease the blow. I was like, come on. Like, what are we talking about here?
What are we doing here, guys?
It was legendary. There's two teams just on these point totals. I do like Tampa Bay. I like Tampa Bay here. The Lightning have been playing much better as of late. That number sits at 97.5. They would need 39 points over their final 32 games to hit that total. And they've been cruising along here for the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're starting to sort of gel, I think, a little bit, and obviously getting healthier. So I like Tampa to finish like 99, 100 points. They can get this at 97.5 right now, and they only need 39 points in their next 32 games. And then just quickly, because I know there's a lot of Oilers fans who will be here watching right now, the two numbers on the Oilers are 106.5 at -110 or 109.5 at plus 220. I did the math for them to hit the 106, and it's kind of funny how it worked out because they have picked up, in their last 27 games, they've picked up 48 points. In order to hit the number over 106.5, they have to pick up that same 48 points, but over a 37-game stretch. They got 48 in their last 27, which is an insane run, but they only need to win 24 of their last 37 or mixing some loser points along the way to hit the 106.5. So I definitely like that at minus 110. And I'll probably sprinkle the plus 225 at minus 109 just in case for some reason they don't stay, supernova hot, but still stay pretty damn hot. Take a run at that. But the fact that they just need to win 24 of their final 37 when they just won 24-27, I like their ability to maybe push over 106.5. So I like Tampa Bay over 97.5, and I like the Oilers over 106.5, and then Hustlers on a few unders that I like. Jake did say in the chat that the teams that played last night should be up in about 10 minutes or so. So if you want to hop on there.
Okay. So we'll look at Seattle. Seattle's an interesting team. I just, they are right in the mix right now. I'm just not sure that they will be able to significantly increase their lot. That's kind of what I wanted to see. Like the Calgary number particularly stands out to me because, to get that, they need to play 5 games over 500, basically 5 more wins than regulation losses to, if
that's pretty big. You're right.
That's the way that I talk about it. For Winnipeg, just quickly, the Jets, and I haven't spent too much time looking at this because I have a large preseason wager for the Jets over 94.5, but the number is now 108.5 at minus 110. But the extra point, if you like them over 108.5, over 109.5 is plus 135. Like we're talking about 1 extra point and a massive swap in the odds there.
Huge boost, yeah.
So, if you're jumping on Winnipeg, I would say the value, if you're looking at an over, is the 109.5. Can they get to 110? And then there's a wild one, and I don't know if they've added this for some of the other teams. They did for Vancouver as well. This is almost like kind of a President's Trophy bet, but over 119.5, like if they could get to 120, is 15-1. And that's the same number for Vancouver right now. Who have been such a great story. One other interesting number I should mention on the totals is Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is at 93.5. So that would be the over when you'd need to get to a 94. So you're basically talking about 12 more wins than losses. Pittsburgh right now has 5 more. So you're basically talking about winning 7 more games than losing in regulation. When I look at Pittsburgh, I do feel like they are ready for a push, and they're right there in the mix. But like they're in the mix to be just outside the playoffs. Like there's a pretty big gap right now between Toronto and Detroit than the Islanders and Pittsburgh, 51 and 52 points. And I should say they're right there with Jersey. They're right there with Washington. I kind of looking at the under for Pittsburgh for it. And then what was there was one other team that I wanted to take a look at, the Red Wings. Red Wings are 8 games above 500 right now. Oh, the Red Wings will have been, oh no, here they are. So the Red Wings are 8 above 500 right now, and their total is 92.5. So to get the over, the Wings would only need to win 3 more games than lose in regulation. So I actually don't mind the over for Detroit as well. But I think my favorite bet of all of them is under on Calgary at 86.5. It's minus 110. It's not juiced either way because when you trade a guy like Lindholm, potential more trades, they haven't been that good to begin with. I think we're looking at a team that, probably picks right around the top 10. And that probably means that they're, in the 84, 85 point range. It could be worse. I could see them going the other way too. I think it's a lot more likely that. Like Kuzmenko's not coming in and turning this team around and making up for the loss of Lindholm and taking them to another level.
No.
I don't.
Man, would that be quite the twist if that actually happened? All right, so there's some team totals. What about some of these awards, Huss? Anything? I'm going to ask you one. Because we will get to the All-Star stuff here too. But where do we come out on Connor Hellebuyck at -125 to win the Vezina?
I mean, it's
I know it's not plus number, but I can usually swallow -125, and he's having a ridiculous year. Like
he is. Like I would say this: Thatcher Demko has been awesome this year, but he's been the second best guy. I think Hellebuck's clearly number one. I have no reason to think that he won't continue to be that guy. So yeah, if you don't have a piece of Helly already, I mean, again, we are talking about -125 on a prop where anyone could win it. But that's the sort of favorite he can be. I mean, it's funny. Quinn Hughes is a way bigger favorite to win the Norris Trophy than Connor Hellebuyck is. And I think that's just credit to Demko because he is in the mix and Vancouver's been so great all year. But Vancouver scores so much. That hasn't been the case for Winnipeg this year. And I think when people already think of Connor Hellebuyck synonymous with the Vezina, I saw all the mid-season awards. Hellebuyck was winning it. So I think Hellebuyck at -125 is pretty good money. I am interested in the Norris, though. I mean, is there value on Cale Makar at +135? We all know that there's a big-time recency bias. Like, if he goes on a big push at the end of this year, which I think is very likely, considering the numbers he's already put on, like, I kind of think because we're in Canada, there's a lot more focus on Quinn Hughes. But I wouldn't be surprised, like if the Avalanche win the Central, which they're very capable of doing, they're right there. Are we not talking about Makar maybe winning the?
I would straight look. They're already from a point production perspective, they're very close. I mean, if you're looking at Cale Makar at +135, I mean the reason I guess you would see Quinn Hughes at the -169 right now is because people kind of want to put him into that Hart Trophy conversation, whereas Makar's teammate Nathan McKinnon is more in that conversation right now. So there might be some bias in that front. But if you can get Makar at +135 compared to Quinn Hughes at -169, when you look at the season that both of those guys are having, and it's clearly been identified as a 2-horse race, I mean, I'd just play the Makar play for the value at this point.
One thing I'll say is the fact that Hughes hasn't won it before. There is all that talk. I mean, is there talk everywhere around the league about Hughes being MVP like Hart? Or is it just because we're in Western Canada and we get more of that?
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be Western Canada. Me and the guys and 2 guys and a goalie did our top 3 Hart Trophy nominees, and one of the boys had Quinn Hughes in there. 2 of us didn't. It's like that type of thing. I think it would be like a conversation on like 8 or 9 guys that you could discuss that could be nominated for the award, not actually maybe win it. So, yeah.
I can't help but see that Hellebuck's not listed here. Jack Eichel, Eichel's 100-1. He's injured, so he's not going to probably get it. But I mean, if put it this way, if they were dropping 100-1 or something like that on Hellebuyck for Hart, I would probably put a small.
Hellebuyck was actually in my 3. I had Kucherov, McKinnon, and Hellebuyck.
There's a lot of people that will say that. Yeah. And I mean, it's legit. It's absolutely legit. And again, the Jets are in a position where if they don't fall back, let's face it, there's the potential that they could win the Central Division and win the West and have by far the best goals against in the National Hockey League. Like, if that happens, he is going to, Jake, if you're listening, get us a number on Hellebuyck for the Hart, please. Yeah. And if you can make it around the 100-1 Jack Eichel, that would be nice. You'll get some of my money. You'll get some of my money. I mean, that's just one of those wild long shots, but it's fun to have when you put it together. Now, not a lot of intrigue for the Rocket. Who's going to?
No, that's a runaway there too. How many goals does Matthews have to score, do you think, to be a top 3 finalist for the Hart Trophy? Because Cass had him on his list. If he hits 70 goals, it's hot to be in that conversation.
I was going to say 70.
It's got to be 70, right? Like if he scores 63, 64.
And I think the Leafs need to be a little bit better than just hanging on to a wild card
Yeah, that's
spot.
true. Like if they're second in the division, he's got 70. Probably changes the conversation a little bit.
Okay, what about the Calder Trophy? Like, I know that everyone, like, Bedard is Bedard, I got to say, I think there is some serious momentum with Brock Faber. And, with the amount of time that Connor Bedard has missed, I mean, if he's coming back, I mean, he's so good, and just his name alone, there'll be people that aren't paying attention to Minnesota and Brock Faber that probably just auto vote for Bedard. But I could certainly make the argument that there is great value at Faber at plus 350 with the season that he's having, the heads that he's turned around the league. And I would say do it now, because I believe he's going to be at the All-Star game. And then you're going to start hearing a lot more, hey, guess what? This isn't just a runaway for Connor Bedard starting this weekend when Faber shows up in Toronto.
Playing 24.50 a night with 29 points in 49 games.
And keep in mind that Jared Spurgeon, their captain, is now out for the season. So that number is not going down at all. If anything, it's going up. And I mean, we've seen him a few times already in these head-to-head games with Minnesota and Winnipeg, and he is the real deal. And listen, if Bedard was going to play the whole season, that wasn't going to be a possibility. But to be honest, I might throw a little bit on Brock Faber, just to see what happens, because I don't think there's any guarantee that the second half of the year, still, he was going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, if you're out 2 months, that's a big chunk of the season. I'm trying to think of when that happened. Like, how soon is he scheduled to return?
Well, he's got to be getting a little bit closer now. I mean, it's been out for quite some time. Let me see here. Let me take a quick peek. By the way, Connor Hellebuck is up for the Hart Trophy at 75-1.
Oh, right on. So Jet fans, if you want to jump on that, we'll talk about that on WST a little bit later on. There we are. Got our guy Helly in there at 75-1. Why not?
How nice is it to be able to ask for something like that and have it happen 3 minutes later?
The beauty of the boys. The beauty of the boys at the lock shop. A couple other things and it was weird. Like 2 weeks ago, the Jets and Avalanche were co-favorites for the West. Obviously, Edmonton's shaken that up, the fact that they haven't lost since that point. The Jets number was at 12-1. 1 week, 3 games without your top center, and all of a sudden you're getting a bit better of a number. Jets at 15-1. But 7-1 for the West is interesting, although there's really not a big difference between Dallas, Vegas, and Winnipeg, all at 625, 650, 700, and Vancouver. How about that? Vancouver is still 6. Like, you want to talk about the Rodney Dangerfield, the no respect award. Vancouver 6th to win the West, despite being the number 1 team right now by a pretty big margin in points.
Yeah, plus 725 right now to win the West. Are you talking including playoffs or just in the regular season?
Yeah, that's including playoffs.
Yeah, including the playoffs, yeah. Well, yeah, that is probably a little bit disrespectful with how good of a season that they've had. You just look at the teams above them once you get to playoff time. Colorado's been there, done it. Vegas has been there and done it. Dallas has more playoff experience recently than the Vancouver Canucks. Winnipeg Jets are always disrespected anyway, so I don't know where we come out on them at the 7-1. And then the Oilers have been to a conference final, second round last year. Yeah, like we said, even the Lindholm trade didn't really move any of these numbers for the Vancouver Canucks. So I don't know. Maybe the Canucks are just a team that everybody's expecting to not have a sniff of getting past the second round.
Hey, what do you feel about Oilers plus 150 to win the Pacific? Like, they're 12 points back, but they do have those 4 games in hand on Vancouver.
Yeah, and they have a head-to-head against the Vancouver Canucks. And the Canucks, they'll have to slow down a little bit, I would think. And I know it sounds crazy to say that because we're 49 games into the season and they haven't really. But with the games in hand that the Edmonton Oilers have, that could be 8 points. Maybe 6 points. They win the head-to-head, that's 8 points. And then they've almost made that entire thing up. So at plus 150, I got time for it at plus 150. I'm not going to sit here and say it's an automatic by any stretch of the imagination. But with the way that they've been playing, plus 150 is not a bad number.
It's not a good enough number to do it. Hey, while we're looking at these numbers, Is there any other awards? I guess, do we have is there Jack Adams or no?
I don't see a Jack Adams.
I don't think there is Jack Adams right now, so we can worry about that later. But to make the playoffs, these are a couple of interesting ones. And I was just throwing out Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I can get him at plus 115.
I was just about to say, I think it's isn't plus 145? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes is minus 145. No is plus 115.
They're 7 points back.
There's
now,
7 points back.
Four games in hand on Detroit too, right? So
on Detroit, and I guess, but again,
but
that's
still, you got to take you got to
games.
take advantage of your games in hand. The plus 115 for the Penguins to not make the playoffs seems like a pretty reasonable number.
Who's more likely to make a run, Pittsburgh or New Jersey?
Well, I would maybe falsely still say New Jersey, and they're at minus 120. They have the same amount of points. And Pittsburgh has just 1 game in hand on them, right? So I guess that's how it's being viewed there as well with those 2 numbers.
They got to basically get they've got to get Jack Hughes back. And you know what's interesting? I don't see a number for the Red. Okay, and again, the Red Wings, because they played last night, so that's going to be added in. They got the 1 point right now. The Wings, and then what about Philly? Philly to make the playoffs, yes, plus 150, no, minus 200. I have to say I kind of agree with that. I mean, they've had this amazing start to the year. They're in this spot, but this whole Carter Hart thing, I think I don't want to say it's rattled the team, but they've lost 5 in a row. They're bleeding heading in, and they don't have Carter Hart to play those important games down the stretch. And Urson's been pretty good.
30-1 for the Calder, as Jake pointed out.
Ooh.
Yeah. They'd have to go on a hell of a run. But, yeah.
Well, if they made the playoffs on his back and Bedard didn't do much and Faber, although I think Faber's just so far ahead right now with where
you look at Philly and Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh and the Islanders are just 4 points back of Philly. And Pittsburgh is 5 points back of Philly with 4 games in hand, right? Because Philly's got fewer points than the wild card teams right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. There's so much to dive into on this. You got to find 3 or 4 that you really like, right? And then get into it.
We haven't touched on the Hart Trophy. Like McKinnon is the favorite right now at minus 143. Well, okay, if McKinnon and Kucherov are neck and neck in points right now, and Makar is on a team that I think we all agree has more talent, McKinnon's on a team with more that has a player like Makar that we've talked about that could be in that mix. Does it make sense?
And Rantanen, I mean, they have Rantanen as well, and Rantanen's right up there. Kucherov has like 30 more points than anybody else in the Lightning or something, or 25 points or something. I get,
and McDavid at 4-1. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, if he makes this push, like I think we all expect to, and it's close at the end, and he drags that team from terrible to where they're at right now.
McKinnon hasn't won one though, has he? Kucherov won in 2019, and I know writers and stuff, you're not supposed to. But I think there's a narrative here that McDavid's not going to win it this year. Kucherov already has his, and Nathan McKinnon's about to get his. I feel like that's probably the bigger narrative than having other good players playing well with you this year, at least.
Dog and the boys back at the HQ putting this down, I think, are thinking about that exact point that you just made when it comes to the Hart Trophy odds and certainly the Norris odds, because Quinn Hughes at minus 169, has he been brilliant? Absolutely. I know there was all that early talk that he was, we talked about at the MVP, but I mean, Makar is right there. Makar's doing special things right now. That team is an absolute powerhouse. It doesn't make sense to me that he's as big of a favorite, but I think there will be somewhat of a sentimental favorite. I think some of these numbers might change coming out of the All-Star break too.
Really? Like right out of the All-Star break, eh?
Well, I mean, maybe not. well, whether they will or maybe they should.
Okay.
Because again, think about who's voting on this stuff. All of the conversation, we're going to start to get some narratives really pumped at the All-Star game and the festivities in Toronto over the course of the next little bit. Hey, speaking of which, just before we go, or I have to run, let's quickly take a look at this All-Star.
Well, I was going to say we can do All-Stars tomorrow too.
Oh, good
right?
point.
We got tomorrow still. So we can dive into All-Stars tomorrow for sure. I mean, I'm not too worried about that.
I like it. This is all. Just hear the odds right now, just in case you're wondering. Overall skills competition winner. And it's great. I mean, all of these numbers are pretty big. McDavid's plus 650. McCarr's 8-1. Pasta, Dry, McKinnon, Kucherov 9-1. Matthews, Elias, Barzal, Quinn Hughes 10-1. JT Miller and Willie Nylander 11-1. This is actually awesome. Like that, just those guys that I just named, the fact that they got all these guys to participate with $1 million on it. I honestly think that this is going to be a big, big hit. Like the game, whatever.
I am, the closer we get to it, I will say, and I'm usually been an anti skills comp guy, but it's because it's kind of become a joke over the last little while. I am getting excited to see these guys hopefully put everything they have into this. I'd like to crown like a legitimate most skilled player in the National Hockey League, right? I think that'd be good. And that's why, even though McDavid's a favorite at plus 650, he helped put this thing together and had so much input on it. I think he'll be motivated to go out and be like, hey, look, I'm the top dog. Let me do this, which I'm fascinated to see how it plays out.
There will be a lot of Oiler fans jumping on that. And by the way, a hilarious, and we'll make our selections tomorrow because I got to run here, but there is, because there's the draft, right? There is the first overall pick, and it sounds like William Nylander is the favorite right now. And I think that's kind of, the teams always go like I guess Austin Matthews is the captain, is that's kind of what they're thinking.
Then that might be what it is.
But the best is last overall pick. Who will be the last player?
Tom Wilson, 4-1.
Tom Wilson, Boone Jenner, Frank Vetrano, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Hurdle, Cam Talbot at 20-1, considering Kings got a win, but it wasn't Cam. He's still on his 11-game losing streak. Big save Dave saved the day for the Kings.
Well, I think he made like 41 saves or something too. Right? Yeah, he was great, actually. It was kind of funny. Winnipeg Sports Talk. What's coming up, Huss? I know you got to get going here, buddy.
Well, we're going to get into this Lindholm trade, what that means for the Jets. Ken Weeb's going to join us from the beaches of Mexico somewhere. Billick's going to jump on. A huge night in university basketball here. The Big Duckworth Challenge. The Bisons from U of M versus the Westmen of U of W. Our pal Joey Slattery, formerly of CTV Sports.
Yeah, I know Slattery really well.
Yeah, the Slat Man's coming on today. So, we'll focus in on some of the hockey stories, and I think hear a little bit of the Strevolution, who's back in town. He spoke this morning. We're going to have him on the show next week, but get a little bit of audio there.
How crazy is the town for Streveler coming back? Like, is he going to get a bunch of sponsorships and make his money on the side? Like, he'll be doing good?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, hey, let's face it. He was just in the NFL for...
He's got his pension and stuff. Like, yeah.
He's got the pension. Like he loves it here. And for a guy that was never really a starter, he's got to be the most popular player in the history of Winnipeg sports. But he's a great character. And listen, depending on what happens with these running backs, don't be surprised if Chris Streveler has a big, big role in the offense, even if Zach Caleros is the one for the most part that's under center.
Haas, you have a good show today, buddy, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll dive into those all-star bets.
Right on. Sounds good, dude. Talk to you then.
That is Haas. You can find him on Twitter at Hustlerama. For some reason, you don't already follow him. And, hey, if you're an ES tier, why don't you slide on over to Winnipeg Sports Talk, give them a sub as well. And if you are a WS tier, why don't you give us a sub here at Edmonton Sports Talk? We would appreciate that. Two guys and a goalie coming up here in a little bit on EST, both on TuneIn at EdmontonSportsTalk.com and, of course, on our YouTube channel. Just quickly, I mean, it's a light night tonight. NBA is a place that you could look at. I'm not too sure where Huss is going to go with his play of the day yet. Had a tough week for Huss on the play of the day, just as far as not lots to choose from, I guess you could say. That would not be an ideal week to do it. Things will ramp up a little bit again next week. 4 games in the association tonight. The Boston Celtics, I'll come back around to this game in a second. The Celtics are 12-point favorites at home against the Lakers. The Knicks are 3-point favorites at home against the Pacers. The Grizz, 7.5-point dogs at home against the Cavs. And then the 76ers, 5-point dogs on the road against the Utah Jazz. The Lakers have been absolutely awful as of late. They lost their last 2 games by 16. LeBron came out after the last game and said, they feel like they could beat any team in the league when they're on, which I think they could, especially if AD's healthy, or they could get absolutely smoked by any team in the league, which has been happening a lot lately. I see a team that's giving up on Darvin Ham, and I think tonight will have a lot to say about that. If they can be competitive tonight and push the Celtics, and I know there's been reports about, Darvin Ham and ownership's got his back, but if they continue to slide the way that they're sliding here, and you see the looks from the players, you see some of the comments from the players saying it's on the coach a bit in the post game here. Part of me feels like there's a Celtics 20-point victory coming tonight here at home in Boston. So I think I probably would lean the Celtics minus the 12. As for some exclusives currently available for you, the former Dino Delight, a couple of former Raptors, OG Anunoby and Siakam, both to score 20 tonight, plus 225. Tatum, Markkanen, and Donovan Mitchell all to record 3 balls, 3-1. Chalk it up, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, and Jazz all to win, plus 325. And then the Chamberlain, need 100 points, and they each have to hit 25. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Mitchell, and Harris all to record 25-plus points. That's a long shot. I don't think I'd be on it with the way the Lakers are playing lately, but that's at plus 1050. Rod Z is in and says Boston is 0-5 against the spread as home favorites versus the Pacific. Rod, how dare you try to ruin my Lakers are trying to get Darvin Ham fired narrative? That's nuts. He also has Towson as 17 straight home wins, laying the minus 6.5. Dusty, any leans on the Wolves in the Man United game? Duck Dad, you are hilarious. But around here, with the exception of Matthew Wannock, we all pretty much cheer against Manchester United. So I guess I'm on the Wolves. That'll be a good one. All right, that's going to do it for the lock shop today. We do have 2 guys and a goalie coming up right here on Edmonton Sports Talk on YouTube. Make sure you leave autoplay on. We got a blockbuster. We got a big trade to talk about in the National Hockey League. How does this impact the Edmonton Oilers, if at all? And we're going to come back around to Lieutenant Eric's tweet from earlier today here at Edmonton Sports Talk on would Oilers fans be okay if they do nothing prior to the deadline? Of course, the answer is no, they wouldn't. But over 40% of the people this morning said yes, they would, which I have a hard time believing. 2 guys and a goalie coming up. Lock shop tomorrow. We will we'll take a look. Hopefully there's a little bit of movement or something on the Super Bowl matchup, which we'll be looking forward to breaking down here as well. And obviously we'll dive into all-star skills, which in a weird way, I'll say this, I'm very excited to get to some props on the All-Star Skills competition in the National Hockey League. What's up with that? Thank you very much for joining us today. Good luck tonight, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on The Lock Shop.